My parents called begging me to loan my sister $15,000 for divorce attorney fees and a new apartment, saying she has nothing left after he cleaned her out financially. They guilt-tripped me for hours about family obligations. What they didn't know was that I'd already received a call from his attorney offering me $50,000 to testify about her hidden assets and her affair with his business partner. My name is Sebastian, I'm 36 years old, and I work as a senior accountant for one of the largest CPA firms in Denver. I've always been the responsible one in my family, the one who studied hard, saved money, made smart financial decisions, and built a stable career. My younger sister Samantha, 32, has always been the opposite, impulsive, financially reckless, and somehow always managing to land on her feet through charm, manipulation, or family bailouts. This story begins with understanding the dynamic that's existed in our family for decades. Growing up, Samantha was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the dependable one who was expected to succeed without much recognition or support. When Samantha wanted to quit college after 2 years to pursue her passion for interior design, our parents supported her decision and helped fund her various failed business ventures. When I graduated summa cum laude with my accounting degree and got hired at a prestigious firm, the family celebration lasted about 5 minutes before the conversation turned back to Samantha's latest crisis. Over the years, I've watched my parents bail Samantha out of numerous financial disasters. There was the boutique she opened with no business plan that folded within 8 months, the expensive car she bought and couldn't afford the payments on, the credit card debt she accumulated furnishing an apartment she couldn't afford, and countless smaller emergencies that always seemed to require immediate family assistance. Meanwhile, I lived within my means, built up substantial savings, invested wisely, and advanced in my career. By age 30, I owned a house, had a healthy retirement account, and was making 6 figures. I'd helped my parents with some home repairs and medical bills over the years, but I'd never asked them for anything since graduating college. The pattern became even more pronounced after Samantha married Kyle Morrison 5 years ago. Kyle owned a successful construction company and seemed to have money, which my parents saw as the solution to Samantha's financial irresponsibility. The wedding was extravagant, paid for largely by Kyle and his family, and everyone seemed relieved that Samantha had found someone who could afford her lifestyle. What became clear over the following years was that Kyle's financial stability enabled Samantha's worst impulses rather than correcting them. She quit her part-time job at a design firm because Kyle could provide for both of them. She started spending money on expensive clothes, jewelry, spa treatments, and elaborate vacations that she documented extensively on social media. Kyle seemed happy to fund this lifestyle, at least initially. I noticed problems in their marriage about 2 years ago during family gatherings. Kyle would make subtle comments about Samantha's spending, while she would dismiss his concerns and change the subject. There was tension beneath their public displays of affluence, but I minded my own business. I'd learned long ago that getting involved in Samantha's relationship drama only led to being blamed when things went wrong. The first sign of serious trouble came last year when Samantha asked to borrow $5,000 to cover some unexpected expenses while Kyle was temporarily dealing with cash flow issues in his business. I was skeptical but agreed to help with the understanding that it would be repaid within 6 months. That money was never repaid, and when I asked about it, Samantha became defensive and accused me of being heartless for caring about money when she was going through a difficult time. 6 months ago, I started hearing rumors through mutual friends that Samantha and Kyle's marriage was in serious trouble. There were stories about public arguments, separate vacations, and Kyle's growing frustration with Samantha's spending habits. I also heard whispers about Samantha being seen around town with other men, but I didn't put much stock in gossip. The call that started this whole mess came on a Tuesday evening in late September. It was my mother, Helen, and I could tell immediately from her voice that something was wrong. "Sebastian, honey, I need to talk to you about something important," she began. "It's about Samantha." My heart sank. I'd been expecting this call for months. "What's going on, Mom?" "Kyle filed for divorce last week," she said, her voice breaking. "He's being absolutely horrible to Samantha. He's trying to take everything, and she has nothing. She doesn't even have money for an attorney." I felt a familiar mixture of sympathy for my sister and frustration with the situation. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mom. Divorce is always difficult." "Sebastian, she needs help," Mom continued. "She needs money for attorney fees and a security deposit for an apartment. Kyle has frozen all their joint accounts, and she literally has nowhere to go." Here it comes, I thought. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer would be more than I was comfortable with. "The attorney wants a $10,000 retainer, and she needs at least $5,000 for first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. She's looking at $15,000 total." $15,000. More than I made in 2 months after taxes. "Mom, that's a lot of money," I said carefully. "Have you and Dad considered helping her?" "You know we would if we could," Mom replied, "but we're still paying off Dad's medical bills from his surgery last year. We just don't have that kind of money available." This was partially true. My father Gerald had needed surgery for a heart condition, and even with insurance, the bills had been substantial. However, I also knew that my parents had recently taken an expensive cruise and were planning a kitchen renovation, so their financial priorities seemed selective. "What about Samantha's savings?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. She doesn't have any, Mom admitted. Kyle controlled all the finances, and she never had her own accounts. Everything was in his name. This was concerning for multiple reasons, not least of which was that it suggested Samantha had learned nothing about financial independence despite being married to someone with money. Mom, I understand this is a difficult situation, I said, but $15,000 is a significant amount of money. I need to think about it. Sebastian, she's your sister, Mom said, her voice taking on the guilt-inducing tone I remembered from childhood. Family helps family. You're doing well financially, and she has nothing. How can you even hesitate? The conversation continued for another hour, with Mom alternating between emotional appeals about family loyalty and subtle implications that my success created an obligation to help less fortunate family members. She mentioned how hard Samantha's life had been, how Kyle had taken advantage of her trusting nature, and how I was the only person in a position to help. I'll call you back tomorrow, I finally said, needing time to process the request and figure out how I felt about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. $15,000 represented months of savings, money I'd earmarked for home improvements and retirement contributions. It also represented continuing a pattern where Samantha's poor decisions became other people's financial responsibility. But she was my sister, and if she was genuinely in a desperate situation due to an abusive husband's financial control, helping her seemed like the right thing to do. The next morning, I called my father to get his perspective on the situation. Dad, Mom called last night about Samantha needing money for the divorce, I began. Yeah, it's a real mess, Dad replied. Kyle's being vindictive. He's trying to leave her with nothing out of spite. What exactly happened between them? I asked. Dad gave me a version of events that painted Samantha as the victim of Kyle's controlling behavior and financial abuse. According to this narrative, Kyle had isolated Samantha from her friends, controlled all their money, and was now using his financial resources to destroy her in the divorce proceedings. She just needs enough money to get a good attorney who can fight for her fair share, Dad explained. Once the divorce is settled, she'll be able to pay you back from her settlement. I agreed to think about it over the weekend and give them an answer on Monday. That Friday, something unexpected happened that completely changed my perspective on the situation. I received a phone call at work from an attorney named Jennifer Walsh, who identified herself as Kyle Morrison's divorce attorney. Mr. Garrett, I'm calling because your name has come up in connection with our client's divorce proceedings, she said. I understand you're Samantha Morrison's brother. That's correct, I replied, wondering why Kyle's attorney would be calling me. Mr. Garrett, I need to ask you some questions about your sister's financial situation and whether you've had any conversations with her about assets or income that might not have been disclosed in the divorce proceedings. My heart started racing. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Let me be more direct, Ms. Walsh said. We have reason to believe that Samantha has been hiding assets and income from her husband throughout their marriage. We also have evidence that she's been having an affair with Kyle's business partner, and that this affair may have involved financial improprieties. I sat in stunned silence, processing what I was hearing. Mr. Garrett, are you there? Yes, I'm here, I managed. What kind of evidence are you talking about? Without going into too much detail, we have bank records showing deposits into accounts that Samantha didn't disclose, documentation of expensive purchases made with cash, and communications between your sister and Kyle's business partner that suggest both personal and financial relationships. Ms. Walsh continued, we're particularly interested in a design business that your sister has been operating under an assumed name, as well as some real estate investments that appear to be in other people's names. I don't know anything about any of that, I said honestly. Mr. Garrett, we'd like to schedule a time for you to give a deposition about your knowledge of your sister's financial situation, her spending habits, and any conversations you've had with her about money or assets. Why would you want to talk to me? Because we believe you may have information that's relevant to proving that Samantha has been deceiving her husband about their financial situation throughout their marriage. We also believe she may have asked you for money under false pretenses. The pieces started falling into place. The $5,000 I'd loaned Samantha that was never repaid. Her vague explanations about Kyle's cash flow problems. Her lack of any personal savings despite being married to a wealthy man for 5 years. Mr. Garrett, I need to be clear about something, Ms. Walsh continued. If you cooperate with our investigation and provide truthful testimony about what you know, we're prepared to offer you compensation for your time and assistance. We're talking about a substantial amount, $50,000, in recognition of the fact that your testimony could be crucial to our case. $50,000. More than 3 times what my parents were asking me to loan Samantha. I need to think about this, I said. Of course. But Mr. Garrett, I should mention that we'll be subpoenaing your financial records regarding any money you've provided to your sister. If you've been unknowingly involved in helping her hide assets, it's better to cooperate voluntarily than to be compelled to testify. After the call ended, I sat at my desk trying to make sense of what I'd learned. Either Kyle's attorney was lying and trying to manipulate me into betraying my sister, or everything my parents had told me about Samantha's situation was false. I decided to do some investigating on my own. As an accountant, I have access to various databases and public records that most people don't know how to navigate. Over the weekend, I spent hours researching Samantha's name, Kyle's business, and any public records associated with them. What I found was shocking. Samantha had indeed been operating a design business under the name S&M Interiors for the past 3 years. The business had generated significant revenue, over $200,000 in the past year alone, that she apparently hadn't disclosed to Kyle. The business was registered to a P.O. box, and the bank account was in the name of Samantha's college roommate, Melissa. I also found property records showing that Samantha was listed as a co-owner of a rental property that had been purchased 2 years ago for $180,000. The property was currently rented for $1,800 per month, providing additional undisclosed income. Most damaging of all, I found social media evidence of Samantha's affair with Kyle's business partner, Marcus Fleming. Photos from business trips that were clearly romantic getaways, expensive gifts that she'd claimed came from clients, and timeline evidence showing that the affair had been going on for at least 2 years. Armed with this information, I made a decision that would permanently alter my relationship with my family. On Monday morning, I called Ms. Walsh and agreed to provide a deposition about everything I knew regarding Samantha's financial situation. I also agreed to testify about the $5,000 loan that had never been repaid and any other financial requests she'd made over the years. That afternoon, I called my parents and told them I wouldn't be loaning Samantha the $15,000. "Sebastian, how can you do this to your own sister?" Mom asked, her voice full of disappointment. "Mom, I need you to sit down and listen to what I'm about to tell you," I said. "Samantha is not the victim in this divorce. She's been lying to everyone, including you and Dad." I spent the next hour explaining everything I'd discovered about Samantha's hidden business, her undisclosed assets, and her affair with Kyle's business partner. I provided details about the property ownership, the business revenue, and the evidence of her deception that spanned years. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. "That's impossible," Mom finally said. "Samantha would never. She's not capable of that kind of deception." "Mom, I have documentation. Bank records, business filings, property deeds. This isn't speculation or rumors. This is factual evidence that Samantha has been deceiving her husband throughout their marriage." "Even if that's true," Dad interjected, having picked up the extension, "she's still your sister. Family doesn't abandon family." "Family also doesn't lie to each other," I replied. "Samantha has been manipulating all of us. She doesn't need money for attorney fees because she has money. She doesn't need help with an apartment because she owns rental property. She doesn't need to be rescued because she's not a victim." The conversation ended with my parents hanging up on me, but not before making it clear that they considered my refusal to help as a betrayal of everything they'd raised me to believe about family loyalty. 3 days later, I received an angry phone call from Samantha herself. "Sebastian, I cannot believe you would turn your back on me when I need you most," she began, her voice shaking with rage. "Samantha, let's cut through the bullshit," I replied, using language I'd never used with my sister before. "I know about S&M Interiors. I know about the rental property on Elm Street. I know about Marcus Fleming. I know about all of it." The silence that followed confirmed everything I suspected. "How did you?" she started, then stopped. "I'm an accountant, Samantha. I know how to find financial information. The question is, how did you think you could hide all of this from Kyle, from our parents, from everyone?" "You don't understand," she said, her voice changing from anger to desperation. "Kyle is controlling. He monitors everything I do. I had to have my own money, my own independence." "So you decided to commit fraud instead of having an honest conversation about financial autonomy in your marriage?" "It's not fraud," she protested. "That money is mine. I earned it. Money that you hid from your husband while claiming to have no assets or income is fraud, Samantha. Money that you used to fund an affair with his business partner is fraud. Lying about your financial situation in divorce proceedings is fraud." The conversation devolved into Samantha accusing me of betraying family, while I tried to explain that helping her would have made me complicit in her deception. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said before hanging up. "You've destroyed your own sister to make money." The deposition took place the following week. I provided detailed testimony about Samantha's financial requests over the years, her claims about Kyle's controlling behavior, and the timeline of her asking for money while apparently having significant hidden assets. Kyle's attorney presented evidence that painted a picture of systematic deception spanning the entire marriage. Samantha had been diverting income from her design business, using cash from rental property to fund her affair, and claiming financial dependence while building a substantial personal fortune. The most damaging revelation came when they presented evidence that Samantha and Marcus Fleming had been planning to start their own construction and design company using money taken from Kyle's business accounts. The affair wasn't just personal, it was also a business conspiracy designed to steal Kyle's clients and assets. 2 weeks after my deposition, the divorce settlement was reached. Instead of receiving half of Kyle's assets, Samantha was ordered to pay him $75,000 in damages for the money she'd stolen from his business. She was also required to disclose all hidden assets and pay taxes on the unreported income from her secret business. Kyle kept the house, the business, and most of their shared assets. Samantha kept her hidden assets but lost any claim to Kyle's legitimate wealth. She also faced potential criminal charges for tax evasion and business fraud. The $50,000 I received for my testimony was life-changing money that allowed me to pay off my mortgage and invest in my retirement. More importantly, It validated my decision to prioritize truth over family loyalty. The aftermath with my family was predictably difficult. My parents stopped speaking to me entirely, convinced that I had destroyed Samantha's life for money. They refused to acknowledge that Samantha's problems were the result of her own choices and deceptions. Samantha attempted to reconcile with me several months later, claiming that she'd learned from her mistakes and wanted to rebuild our relationship. However, when I asked her to repay the $5,000 she'd borrowed from me 2 years earlier, she became angry and accused me of being vindictive and petty. That money was a gift to help family, she said. No, Samantha, it was a loan that you obtained under false pretenses, I replied. You told me you needed money because Kyle was having cash flow problems. The truth is that you needed money to fund your affair and your secret business while keeping Kyle unaware of your actual financial situation. She never repaid the money, and we haven't spoken since. The most unexpected outcome of this entire situation was that I developed a friendship with Kyle. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, he reached out to thank me for my honesty and to share his perspective on what had happened in their marriage. Sebastian, I want you to know that I never tried to control Samantha financially, he explained. I encouraged her to have her own bank account, her own credit cards, her own business. What I couldn't accept was the lying and the cheating. Kyle revealed that he'd known about Samantha's secret business for over a year but had chosen not to confront her about it, hoping she would come clean on her own. He'd only discovered the affair when he found evidence of financial transactions between Samantha and Marcus that were clearly personal rather than business-related. I would have supported her having her own business, he said. I would have even supported her wanting more independence in our marriage. What I couldn't support was the systematic deception and betrayal. Kyle and I have remained friends, bonding over our shared experience of being deceived by someone we'd trusted completely. He's now remarried to a wonderful woman who appreciates his honesty and integrity, and he seems genuinely happy. As for me, this experience taught me valuable lessons about family loyalty versus personal integrity. I learned that enabling someone's bad behavior isn't the same as supporting them, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. I also learned that my parents' definition of family loyalty was actually family dysfunction disguised as virtue. They expected me to prioritize Samantha's immediate comfort over long-term accountability, and to value family harmony over truth and justice. I've since built stronger relationships with friends and colleagues who share my values of honesty, responsibility, and mutual respect. I've also started dating someone wonderful, a fellow accountant named Rachel who appreciates straightforward communication and shared financial goals. The $50,000 I received for my testimony allowed me to achieve financial independence faster than I'd ever imagined possible. I invested most of it in index funds and used the remainder to take a dream vacation to Europe. For the first time in my adult life, I made a major financial decision without considering how it might affect other family members or whether I should be saving money for their inevitable emergencies. I occasionally hear updates about Samantha through mutual friends. She's still living in Denver, working as a freelance interior designer, and struggling financially due to the legal fees and tax penalties from her divorce. She's been in several short-term relationships but nothing serious. According to people who know her, she seems bitter and resentful about how her divorce turned out, still claiming that Kyle and I conspired against her. My parents have gradually resumed limited contact with me, though our relationship remains strained. They still believe I was wrong to testify against Samantha, but they've stopped actively criticizing my decision. I think they've begun to understand that Samantha's problems were more extensive than they'd initially realized. Last month, I received a text message from Samantha asking if we could meet for coffee to talk about everything that happened. I declined politely but firmly. I've learned that some relationships can't be repaired, especially when one person refuses to take responsibility for their actions. The experience taught me that protecting yourself from manipulation isn't selfish, it's necessary for maintaining your integrity and mental health. It also taught me that family loyalty shouldn't require you to ignore criminal behavior or enable someone's worst impulses. When people ask me if I regret my decision to testify against my sister, I tell them that I regret the situation existing in the first place, but I don't regret choosing honesty over deception. I don't regret prioritizing my own financial security over funding someone else's illegal activities. And I don't regret learning the difference between supporting family members and enabling their destructive behavior. The $15,000 my parents asked me to loan Samantha would have disappeared forever, just like the $5,000 I'd already lost. Instead, I received $50,000 for telling the truth, which felt like the universe rewarding me for making the difficult but correct choice. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is to refuse to participate in their dysfunction. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the reality of their choices. And sometimes the person who needs rescuing isn't the one everyone thinks it is. Samantha didn't need a $15,000 loan for attorney fees and an apartment. She needed accountability for years of lies, fraud, and betrayal. Kyle didn't need to be taught a lesson about treating women fairly. He needed protection from financial abuse and infidelity. And I didn't need to prove my family loyalty by enabling destructive behavior. I needed to protect my integrity and my future. In the end, everyone got what they actually needed, even if it wasn't what they thought they wanted. And that, I've learned, is sometimes the best possible outcome.